JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com code podcast.
JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com code podcast.
Welcome to the PowerCat Podcast, GoPowerCat.com's Kansas State Athletics Show. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, from the GPC studios, here's your host, GoPowerCat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the PowerCat Questions Podcast, the Big 12 Tournament Preview Edition. We're going to talk about that, a little spring football, probably about my collection of dolls. We'll talk about that a lot. See if anyone's listening. My co-hosts aren't listening. Tim Fitzgerald, Zach Carlson, and Ryan Gilbert today. We couldn't line up all four schedules, so Gills and Zach just got done with the shoot-around, an early one this week because we can't do it on Friday. The darn tournament starts Wednesday, which is today when you're listening to this, so it too is up at Go PowerCat right now. We hope you're having a good week. We hope Kansas State basketball has a great week, and then we hope K-State football gets all worn out and goes on spring break and is boring and no one gets in trouble. That's what we're hoping for. We're sponsored by The Fridge, wholesale liquor. You can never get in trouble when you go to The Fridge. Unless you try to steal something.
Unless you're not of age.
Okay.
There's certainly some crimes.
Man, I think I went too far on that read. Get into The Fridge. Just wonderful people. Hey, but the big news here in Kansas is, excuse me for saying this, Yingling, is he just hates the way I say it. I say it like it's supposed to be said. How would you say it?
Yingling. Yingling. He's saying it like it's a first and last name. Ying and Ling. Yingling. So I talked to my guy Yingling.
For Manti Bros, we had a Yingling.
A Yingling.
Who's Yingling.
Right? Am I wrong?
Yingling. It's not the same. It's just a small pause. Anyhow, it is in Kansas now, and it has previously just been on keg and stuff. But boy, the shipment came in at the Fridge. Bottles and cans, and oh my goodness, it was so sexy. Just pallets and pallets of delicious Pennsylvania beer. It's Pennsylvania, right? Delicious. But now made in Colorado.
It is.
And now made in Colorado. So,
at least ours was.
If you have never had Yingling, just one word, make sure you try some. And, I bet you the Fridge has the freshest Yingling right there at the Fridge.
It's just
right off
I can't hear it anymore.
Right off the Yingling tree. The freshest Yingling that you could find in stores is at the Fridge. God, it's such good beer. Becky and I went on vacation many years ago to Savannah and Charleston. And in our stop at Charleston, we saw a good friend who still lives there with wife and kids. And Tom took us, he's a former Rockabilly bartender, took us over to where, what's that movie? The Notebook was filmed. It was important to my wife to see this area. And to a really cool bar where I had my first Yingling. And it was love at first taste. I'm not a big domestic beer. I like the Mexican beers, to be real honest. I'm not an IPA guy.
Just loves a Corona Light, right?
No.
I'm more of a Nancy guy.
Yeah, it seems like it. More of a Pacifico and, a little Modelo.
Tecate?
Tecate works.
Okay.
Tecate works. Corona gets too skunky because of the clear bottles. A little light. interacting with the beer. But anyhow, that's probably my favorite domestic beer, and it's been creeping around the country around us. We picked it up in Texas and Oklahoma. It's in Kansas because they've set up a brewing deal out of, I believe, Fort Collins, where also all the Hawaiian beers are
where
also
everything
brewed.
else is beered.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. I mean, when you go and buy what is it, Big Wave? It's not canned in Hawaii. There's no canning in Hawaii, so it is actually from Fort Collins. Crazy.
I'd rather have Colorado fresh, Rocky Mountain water than Hawaiian water.
It's probably tap water.
From Colorado.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that's it for that. That was a good promotion to get into the fridge. Here we go with your questions from Wabash Station. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, like subscribe to this podcast, leave us a 5-star review on Apple, all that stuff I'm forgetting, but we'll go on with Ryan Gilbert. There's no one else to read. I mean, I'm clearly too good for it. Zach's paid his dues.
You want to do it, Zach?
Gills is in charge.
Particularly.
Okay, well then I'll do it.
Do it.
First question from GPC Cole, whoever the hell that is.
Where is it? Who is that?
Couldn't tell you.
Sure, it's GPC and not Gipich.
Okay, you're right. Cole, who is your pick to win the Big 12 tournament? How many teams make the NCAA tournament from the Big 12 after the results of the weekend?
I'm going to go with Arizona. And I think 14 teams will make the Big 12, make the NCAA. I'm picking, I hate to say this out loud because it's who K-State plays. I've been saying TCU is going to win the Big 12 tournament. I have a feeling they're going to go on a run. And they knew damn well that they were just kind of cruising into the tournament when they lost at Oklahoma. They're healthy, and I think they're going to gear up and just run through that tournament. They're really good when they're healthy. In fact, Jerome Tang said what? That they're the best team in the league when they're healthy. I thought that was something else.
Yeah.
The 6th seed.
I'll go with Iowa State. That's a team that always plays well. And Kansas City, Iowa State had an awful end of the season. I get that, but dominating Baylor on the last game of the regular season, I think that can carry over into the tournament for them, and they always show up in Kansas City. So I go Iowa State.
Okay.
We'll go KU.
Wow.
Chalk.
Rock. Chalk.
So let me get this right. The K-State podcast, the entire panel no one picked K-State, which has never won the Big 12 tournament. Which, if you stop and think about 96, when would have been 97 with basketball, right. It's been pretty slim pickings. Now, there were some decent years for Weber, but I don't know if you're aware of this, folks. He wasn't a particularly good tournament coach. Frank had some decent teams, but yeah, I mean, they've just been outmanned. This team could win it. But let me ask a question that is that GPC Cole guy probably didn't think of. Is it good for K-State to win the Big 12 tournament?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, if they play a Friday game, it's fine. If they play a Thursday game, not as great. But
you're talking about tournament. Yeah.
Even if they do play on Saturday, that'll still be a longer break than they've had since December.
That's a good point. I think it would help their confidence. Really believe going into that tournament. Might get them a 2 seed in the tournament. I think they're on the 3 line right now. I'm kind of thinking they're going to end up in Denver. I have no information on that, but it just feels like that's where they're going to end up. That they might be in Denver. Arizona might be in Denver. Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. That'd be kind of fun. I could bug Jason Shear about conference realignment.
Yeah, you could. There'll probably be 7 teams from the Big 12.
It's Oklahoma State's the one. Like right now, you look at bracketology, that is the last team out. I just looked. And so I think if they beat Texas in the second round, they're probably in.
I think it's bull crap that only 7 from the Big 12's in.
Yeah.
I think it's absolute bull crap. I think 7 should be in and 8 and 9 should go to Dayton. I really do. I think they should play in the separate games in Dayton, and I would pick them to win by double digits over whomever they'd play. I think it'd be a mismatch. Did someone just knock at the door?
I bumped into the wall. Sorry.
Don't do that. Get control of yourself. So, okay. Moving on.
From Kat in the place where Yingling and Big Wave are brewed.
Ooh, Fort
Colorado.
Collins.
Yeah, I don't know if he's in Fort Collins.
Well, so you meant like the greater area, not the specific.
Sure.
Okay,
yes,
whatever.
Yes.
God, it's hard to keep track of him.
The worst case scenario.
He's so weird.
Lose in the first round of the Big 12 tournament and end the NCAA tournament. Versus the best case scenario, win the Big 12 tournament and advance to at least the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament. What odds would you give for each, and which outcome is more likely?
So the first one was lose?
Yes.
That's not going to happen. I mean, they might lose in Kansas City, but they're not losing the first.
That would be a wake-up call.
I mean, that's a 2-15, 3-14 game. That would be a significant upset. I go back to this. I think Florida is better than any team they'll play in the first round or comparable, and they just kind of cruised over Florida.
Sure.
I think when all the Big 12 gets out of facing Big 12 teams, it's going to be a relief. It's just a whole different level. So I'd go with the second one more likely, but, I mean, let's be realistic that it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, I think if they beat TCU, maybe they'd lose to Texas and they end up going to the Sweet 16. I think we would all be pretty damn happy with that.
I mean, I personally don't think that as far as the success of the season, if you're counting on the Big 12 tournament to see success there, I think you're going to be disappointed. If K-State loses in the first round against TCU, it's not that big of a deal. If K-State, especially if K-State can make the Sweet 16, if they can make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, that is an extremely successful season. There's no doubt about it. So I think for me, it doesn't really matter what they do in Kansas City. If they win the tournament, if they make the championship game, that's a bonus, depending on what they do in the NCAA tournament.
We really don't know. Like, I appreciate this question. It's a good question. We can give our thoughts on it, but Bruce Weber was notorious for not having success in postseason play, right? Like, you kind of knew what to expect, and if K-State did make a run, you're thankful for it, right? You can look at what Scott Drew and Jerome Tang did at Baylor, but this is Jerome Tang's first year as a head coach. We really don't know how this team's going to perform, right? Like, when you look at K-State in the last 10 years, you're thinking, I'm just waiting for this team to get upset, whether that be in the Big 12 tournament or the NCAA tournament. But now you just got to go into it with an open mind, so to speak, and give them a chance, give Tang and his players a chance to show what they can do in postseason play, because it's just such a different, everything that K-State's done all year, postseason play is different. So we'll see. I mean, I think K-State, the odds of them making the Elite Eight are a lot higher than winning the Big 12 tournament. I think the Big 12 is just too tough. I mean, if they're a 3 seed, you're beating a 14, a 6, and then a 2. Like, they can do that easily, right? But to beat, TCU and then probably Texas or Oklahoma State and then KU, Iowa State in that championship game, that's tough, man. So I think K-State can win 3 games in the NCAA tournament way easier than it is to win 3 days in a row against the toughest conference in the country.
I agree with you. If you want to put odds on, can K-State win the Big 12 championship or can they make the Elite Eight, which one is more likely? I'd say the Elite Eight's more likely.
100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're winning 3 games, right? But you also have
3 games both ways, but you have extra days off. Yeah. You got a ton of rest, but also you get to play one of the worst teams you've played since December.
Probably the worst.
Probably the worst team that you've played since December.
Yeah.
And maybe even the next day, you might, meet a team that gave it their all, pulled off the upset, and now they're certainly out of gas. So, I mean, anything can happen in the NCAA tournament. And even if everything goes as according to plan, according to the seeds, K-State is still going to be that upper hand, at least until the Sweet 16.
Yeah, if you're a 2 seed, you win in the first round, you beat a 15, which is, a small conference champion. Not the team small, smaller conference.
Like UC Irvine or LaSalle?
Well, no, like a Furman or
I'm kidding.
No,
I'm kidding. I was making fun of.
Okay. I know, but those are actually what were K-State seeds in those games?
4.
Yep. Yeah. So, but you get in that second round, then you're looking at a 7-10 winner, which is kind of a 50-50 game, really, how it's played out over the past.
It's going to be like a Florida State and
not
Tennessee
that's
this year.
Very manageable. And you just don't know what's going to happen in the other bracket. What if the 2 stumbles over, the 3 stumbles over the 6, and you end up with the 6 in the.
As Clint Stewart said on the Friday shoot-around, which will be up on Wednesday, it's called March Madness for a reason, right? Crazy things happen.
Because I get really mad when I bet on these games. Is that what's going to happen? It's going to be madness for me.
See, this is why I don't sports bet. No, I've never once placed a dime in my life.
Man, missing out, I think.
I was a stinking liar. I don't know if you know this, folks. If you are into sports gambling, there's a new hashtag going around that could make you a lot of money if you jump on the train. It's called Fade Fits. I actually had a 5-game parlay on the last Saturday of Big 12. I was locked in. I was so confident. I put, $20, $25 down on this parlay. I missed all 5 games.
You got my text right.
What?
Start sending me your picks.
I know. I will. I will.
Yeah. Make some money, man.
You need to start refreshing your apps. We can all see it.
Man, I win $1,000 one day, and I can't make a good pick the next. Go on, Gills. Talk some more.
From Americat, based on my preseason expectations, this season has been great and far exceeded them. However, I'm now worried I have too high of expectations. What should I realistically expect of this team in the NCAA tournament?
Well, I think you need to start worrying about how this team, once crowned national champion, will line up with the NBA champion in that challenge series. I think that's a reasonable expectation. No, I hear you. And I do worry about, K-State maybe losing in the second round. I mean, if they lose in the first round, yeah, they deserve it.
Yeah.
Maybe they run into a 7 or a 6 in the second round that just plays out of their mind and beats them. And I hope people don't have that taste in their mouth for the whole season, because what's happened is remarkable. None of us expected it, and including Jerome Tang. He said this team's exceeded his expectations. This is unbelievable. And on top of that, just think about the fact that they made it through the season without many injuries. They just didn't have room for injuries. What happens if a Desi Sills gets injured and misses 5 games? We saw what they were without him. They just don't have any depth in the backcourt. So I think they've been fortunate, blessed, and let's just see what happens. Let's have fun with this, folks. They might lose in the first game in Kansas City. They seem locked in on it. I mean, Keontae and Marquise were at the press conference the other day, and they just we're going to win. I mean, this isn't just like, hey, it's going to be fun. We'll see what happens. They want to win this thing. They want to add a trophy, do something K-State's never done, and then see what happens in the NCAA tournament. I would say the only thing that you should be upset about is if they lose in the first round, because they shouldn't. They just shouldn't. Not this team.
First or second round, because you're going to be the favorite.
I think just because
in both games until the Sweet 16.
I think just because you're the favorite doesn't mean that losing in the second round isn't. Yeah, I wouldn't call losing in the second round a disappointment. I think if you make the round of 32, you win that first round game, that is enough for me for exceeding expectations. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of K-State fans, especially like what Americat's saying. Maybe you have too high of expectations right now. And I think that K-State fans might have a little bit of high expectations. But if you win that first game, I think you should expect to win that first game for sure. And I think everything after that, it's a tremendous success.
But when you look at what K-State did this season, right, placing third in the Big 12, getting a number 3 seed, maybe a 2 seed, 4 seed, whatever that may be in the big dance, I think you should be disappointed if this team doesn't make it out of the first weekend alive. Now, coming into the year, I think we're all overjoyed that K-State's even in the tournament right now, right? But at this point, as we sit here, doesn't matter what they do in Kansas City, they got to win a few games because of how good they've played this season, right? When you look at the expectations, no, not at all. We're all happy to be here. But I think they've got to win a few games, in my opinion.
This is so much better team than the one that played LSU or Nevada in the Cayman Islands, or even some of those non-conference games. I think they started to find themselves and understand how good they were against Nebraska, because that's an athletic Nebraska team. Granted, they haven't had a great season, but they've been better. It looks like they might get in the NIT.
Winning record right now, yeah.
Yeah, and they just took them apart. They just absolutely took them apart. And I'm telling you, Nebraska passed the eye test when you looked at them. They're really big and athletic, and they just took them apart. I think that's when K-State realized, wait, we're pretty darn good. And they kind of took off in the Big 12, had those huge road wins to start with, and probably came back to earth when everyone realized that this team is really good. We better take them seriously.
You mentioned that Florida game, right? Like that Nebraska game falls in the same category where K-State was just the better team. I thought of that when you said that the Oklahoma game on senior night. Like K-State got off to an awful start and still cruised to a victory. And that kind of goes back to my point of winning at least 2 games in March Madness is just because Kansas State is so much better than a lot of these teams in the country. The top half of the Big 12, right? It gets masked because of how good this league is, but going up against a third-place team in the SEC, Kansas State, there's no reason that the Wildcats can't win by 10 or 15.
Right. Agree.
Last question of the first half from Denland0809. I don't recall this name. Do y'all?
It's their third post.
Okay, well,
I'm assuming they're new. I didn't see how many months, but we've kind of stopped welcoming
we have stopped
everybody.
doing that, yeah.
Because we don't care anymore?
No, it's just I've lost track of who's new and who's not, and I don't want to miss anybody now. It's kind of like
you don't want to leave someone out.
It's like when you're in the second grade, you have to bring cupcakes for everyone on your birthday. Yeah. It's like that. Like now, like there's so many new people.
So you're bringing cupcakes next week?
Oh,
I did not say that.
That's what I heard. Didn't you hear that, Gilbert?
Not my birthday.
Zach say he hates Denland.
Oh, yeah. He hates the numbers after his name? Yeah, I heard that too. Okay, go ahead.
Anyways, who would you pick? Desi Sills to start at running back or Deuce Vaughn to start at point guard?
Desi. I think Desi'd be a good running back, actually.
He's fast,
He's fast.
He's so fast.
He's fast, and he goes up and down the court with no regard to his body. I think he'd be a really good running back. I always do that. I look at basketball players and think, this guy would do this in football.
Marquise Noel's got quarterback vision, doesn't he?
Deontay Johnson's a defensive end. Yeah. But yeah, I don't want Deuce Vaughn on the basketball court.
I think you can count, if you had a nickel for every Baylor basketball player that's playing in the NFL right now, you'd have, 2 nickels probably?
Or have at least gotten a workout with the squad as a tight end or something.
Just
saying. Have a lot of nickels, yeah.
Just saying, there's a lot of nickels there for those tight ends from Baylor basketball. Yeah. Maybe that continues.
Well, even I don't know. Gip got a workout. I don't think DJ Johnson ever gotten anything, but imagine him as a football player? My God.
I think you're right about Gip, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Just saying.
I agree. That's my line. That's Fitz's line, but I'm using it.
Yeah. Desi Sills, running back.
The line is yes.
Yes, Dad. Sorry.
Oh, boy. There we go. By the way, I want to have as we close out the first half here, a little brag here. 24/7 had a kind of end of basketball, end of postseason conference call. We're the 3rd fastest growing site on the network this past year, and I'm really proud of the work the guys have done. And I thank everyone who subscribed. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. You can go check us out for $1 for your first month, and if you don't like us, then cancel. That's how it works. $1. That's all you got to do. $1 stinking dollar. That's not that much unless you're tipping Brian Gilbert at that bar he works at. Then it feels like a lot of money. We'll be back.
GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat podcast continues after this short break.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Welcome back to the PowerCat podcast. Now, let's return to the GPC studios.
Welcome back to the PowerCat Questions Podcast, your weekly endeavor into K-State sports from GoPowerCat.com. Our subscribers at Wabash Station ask us questions on our message board, and we answer them for everyone to hear. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Make sure you're following it on whatever podcast provider you use. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Anything else there?
Stitcher.
I think that's it.
Podbean. I don't even know what Podbean's like.
The Go PowerCats website.
Yeah. A lot of people just listen right
megaphone,
there.
Right?
Yeah, off the megaphone. Anyhow, who cares about all that? But we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you following along. We appreciate you for everything sweet and kind you do for us. We don't appreciate Ryan Gilbert, but that's just his role here to be the guy that gets to be the punching bag. How do you like that, Ryan? Is it working out well for you?
I love it. Bring it on.
It's Tim Fitzgerald. He's Ryan Gilbert. This guy over here is Zach Carlson. Folks, he's hitting it hard. He's got Sonic and he's got a water. Separate places so he doesn't confuse the two.
So don't spill the water everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
I assume you were here earlier, Zach, after the press conference? Okay.
Of course.
I was wondering what the setup was.
Yeah. I was working where you said.
Zachary.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really helped my popularity to have AT&T fiber into my house. And at my age, I need all the fiber I can get. Here's your questions from Wabash Station. Back to it, Ryan Gilbert.
First question of the second half is from Kat in Colorado. And I just want to be sure that Zach did include that you can ask two questions. One football, one basketball.
I did say that. Somebody was upset that I limited it to football and basketball. So they asked about a fishing competition tournament that K-State Fishing is hosting at some lake. They asked what the winning pattern would be. I have no clue what any of that means. Couldn't tell you.
Well, we can't talk about it because it's not football or basketball, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying he was upset, so that he protested and asked about that. So I don't know.
Well, I mean,
about fishing.
The thing about fishing is once you start, you get hooked.
All right, the questions from Cat in Colorado.
We're 2 in a minute, Fitz.
Goodness gracious, awful. The worst. Who will be the football player that surprises us and has the best season of anyone on the roster in 23?
Well, what if I say Will Howard? Would that surprise anyone? I think Will Howard's going to have a monster year. I laugh when I see these odds on Heisman quarterbacks and Dylan Gabriel's above him in the odds, and what's his name? Card from Texas is now at Nebraska. Where's he at now? Nebraska? I don't even know. He's above him.
He's in America, I think.
He's in America? Yeah. But there's guys that I'm like, what are you doing here? What is this? Why don't you throw 100 Deckers in there above him? It's just silly. I think he's going to have a big year. So we've got a feature going up on Wednesday about kind of breakout players, and I still haven't decided who I'm. Every time I come up with an idea, someone takes it, so I got to come up with my own idea. Like someone stole the kicker. That's all I got to say about that.
Was that a joke?
No. It's...
I'll say Chris Tennant. That's what I was going to say. Chris Tennant. I mean,
the fact that he stuck around.
The fact that he stuck around, he's still on the team. I mean, he got benched. I mean, he had zero confidence at a certain point last year. I mean, Ty Zentner literally came in to do it all and was impressive when he did it. But now, who's going to be the kicker? And who's going to be the punter? You got Jack Bloomer back, which is good. He's been experienced, but I mean, at a certain point, it was clear that Ty Zentner was better than him. And Ty Zentner was so good, he did all three specialties, basically.
Does Jack Bloomer sound like he should be like a 17th century British pirate?
No, he sounds like he should be in like a 2040 like future look Amazon Prime digital like series.
Okay.
I feel like that's his name. But no, I'm going to go Chris Tennant. I think that he'll stick it out for the whole year as the kicker. He won't miss when it matters. And he'll turn around to where he's maybe not the star, maybe not the best season on the roster, but certainly not a liability like he was last year.
If you're a kicker and not a ton of people are mentioning your name, it's a good thing, right?
Right.
So, yeah, that's good. Good answer. I think it's somebody in the wide receiver group. RJ Garcia would be my answer here. You know, Phillip Brooks can only do so much. You're losing Knowles and Warner from last year. Deuce Vaughn was a great pass catcher as well. So somebody will have to step up catching the football. I think RJ Garcia is going to be a surprise that plays some meaningful minutes.
Sterling Lockett, perhaps? No? Okay.
I don't know. I don't know enough about Sterling. Yeah, it's going to, I mean, you could pick one of the running backs too. So, but I think Will Howard's going to be the man. I really do. That'll
be a surprise to everybody.
I know. That's a shocker. Yeah.
From Eric Schneid, what position battles are you most interested in as spring football starts up?
I just mentioned running back. I mean, you got Trayshawn Ward and DJ Giddens. What's interesting is both are out right now. They're not able to play due to injury. DJ's out for the whole spring as he recovers. It sounds like Trayshawn might be available by the end of spring practice. Actually, the offensive line, they kind of returned 6 starters because Taylor Portier's back, and Coach Kleiman said at Tuesday's press conference that he's much farther along with this recovery than he was the last one. I don't think this knee injury was quite as severe. And he's really good. So where's he fit in? If he gets his starting role back, who gets bumped? And there's some young linemen, too, that are probably deserving of playing time. That would have slid in if the whole offensive line hadn't decided to come back. I'm intrigued by the offensive line. And then we'll find out about safety and corner and some of those other spots. But that's really what jumps out at me.
Backup quarterback, I know that's not what we're really here to talk about, but that's interesting, isn't it?
I think so. I think when you bring in a quarterback of Avery Johnson's stature, you have a guy like Jake Rubley who was probably as hyped as Avery Johnson was, maybe to a lesser extent because Avery Johnson is from the state of Kansas, best athlete in the state, staying home. I mean, it meant more, for K-State to win that battle with Avery Johnson. But now you have, a guy that was similarly hyped in Jake Rubley. They're going to have to go head-to-head to try taking that backup spot and eventually the starting job once Will Howard leaves. So, yeah, it'll be interesting because I think as it stands right now, I don't think Avery's good enough to be the number 2 guy at the moment. But by the end of fall camp, perhaps he could be.
He's getting bigger.
He did say that today. Yeah. He is
15 pounds?
Growing.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I put on 15 pounds, people call me a fat ass. I don't know. It's double standards.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an elite athlete. He's an elite athlete.
What's your sport?
Table tennis.
Don't have to move very much for that, do you?
Oh, I move a lot. Well, I fall down a lot. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
I agree. You fall down a lot.
Thank you.
E. Marika asks, who will be the most difficult team of the Big 12 newcomers in football?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Most difficult team of the Big 12 newcomers in football.
Oh.
Arizona?
I don't think it's...
No, wouldn't be them.
Probably Utah. Pac-12 champions,
Well, Scott Satterfield doesn't scare me at Cincinnati. I think that was a dreadful hire. I'm going to go with UCF. I'm a Gus Malzahn fan.
They won a national championship a few years ago.
Yeah, so they say.
A few? It's been a decade now, right?
5 years ago?
It hasn't been that long.
Yeah, I think it was 17, wasn't it? 6 years ago? I don't know. What's the matter? I just think once they get access to the Big 12 and the money and the exposure, their recruiting's going to go through the roof. I don't know if next year, I don't know that any of them really scare me next year because I think they're going to have to ramp up to the competition. I mean, BYU has, played good opponents. I think week in and week out, they're going to find the grind. They kind of ran into the wall last year with their schedule. So Houston, they played a lot of Big 12 teams last year and didn't quite get it done. But Dana Holgerson, again, doesn't scare me. He couldn't cut it in the Big 12. That's a place where I think he's going to have a coaching change soon. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Knights. Not the Black Knights. Don't say that. Don't call them Central Florida Black Knights, or you will be punched in the face digitally. Well, not like over.
Because they're the Golden Knights.
They weren't the Golden Knights. They were the Black Knights, weren't they?
The UCF Golden Knights, right?
Oh, that's right. Army's the Black Knights. The Golden Knights. Anyhow, they dropped the color. They don't see color at UCF. Now they're just the Knights.
I'm going to go with BYU because I feel like they play
the Cougars.
No, they play. I think they're going to be the team that's the most Power 5 ready.
Yeah,
they play a lot of Power 5 teams. I don't think that the transition between going independent to Big 12 is going to be as drastic as it is for a team like Houston, who's coming in to play the K-States, the Oklahoma States, the Iowa States, after playing the Navies and the East Carolinas of the world. Not that those are bad programs, but they don't compete at the same level as, the Big 12 does. And, BYU playing Arkansas, Baylor, those are good schools.
Just to clarify, when you say BYU plays a lot of Power 5 programs. You're counting the Pac-12, right? That's one of the 5 conferences?
That is one of the 5.
Okay, they do play them.
I would go BYU, and I'd have to look back at the last 5 years or whatever for this team, but they've probably played the most Power 5 opponents, right?
Well, plus their average age on the roster is 37 years old.
That would also help. Yeah, so I'm with Zach. I'd go BYU. But it's really not that large. Like, all 4 of these teams, I think, are in the same ballpark.
Yeah, their ceiling is a couple wins over bowl eligibility, in my opinion, at least for the first year. I don't think that any of these teams are going to compete at this point. Now that Cincinnati
make a bowl game, something surprise us.
No, I think they'll make bowl games.
So you said 2 games above it?
Yeah, 8? I'm saying like 8 wins, 9 wins is probably the ceiling. I don't think that anybody's going to be competing for a championship this first year. I would say Cincinnati if they didn't have a coaching change, but they made a pretty underwhelming coaching change, as Fitz mentioned.
Weird hire. Very weird.
From Dr. J54, can you sort out the linear TV versus streaming debate? What is your view of the future of watching sports? Fitz, take it away, man.
Well, I do find this interesting. I think we're going to watch a lot of sports streaming in the future. If that's 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, I'm not sure. It's going to move that direction, but it's not now. I mean, if the Pac-12 is really looking at a contract that might be 60% streaming, like ESPN Plus and Apple or whatever, I don't know how. You can't do that. Your exposure will just plummet. Nobody will know you're playing. You basically need most of your games on linear, which is, ESPN or the networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, so that they can promote that your game's on a streaming service. Or you just have a big, significant splash. I'll say this. If the Big 12 had a streaming game of the week, it could promote it with its other games. But I'll be honest here. If the SEC put one of their best games every week on a platform like Apple, people would watch. I mean, they would have enough exposure. The world of sports journalism would talk about that game a lot. The Pac-12 just doesn't move the needle. It's not going to attract viewers to Apple or Amazon or any streaming entity. Folks, they don't attract viewers into their stadiums. Except for a Utah that does a great job with attendance and a few other places. But you need to have an element of streaming. I'm reluctant to say ESPN Plus is a good solution for that because I feel like that is like baseline streaming, the minimal effort. I mean, they forgot the score bug on the K-State game the other day.
It's like they're in second grade and they forgot the cupcakes in their class.
Man, we've had 2. I'm wanting cupcakes now. But I just don't understand why that product isn't better. Sometimes the announcers are awful. Sometimes they're the same announcers you get on other games. So I really think the next step is streaming. It's interesting because I was watching a video podcast from the head of I'm totally spacing it off. It's the Ion Network, the one that was supposedly linked to the Pac-12. And it was the head of their Scripps Sports, which is they're making a push into sports. There is a legitimate effort by them to go into sports, but he said no, they haven't been involved with the Pac-12. I mean, it came up, but they haven't been involved. But he was talking about exactly what we've discussed, that streaming affords you the opportunity to have multiple feeds, which, you could have the streaming announcers, the national announcers. It could also be streaming with your local announcers, with the opposition announcers, and you could actually have a whole separate stream for a gambling, experts, betting experts to sit around and just talk about the game is going and how the different props are going and all that. And eventually, if it's a good enough streaming product and it's a way to integrate your betting apps from the state in which you're in into the screen, you could be making bets during the game.
That's what I was going to get into. Like in FanDuel, you can watch select hockey games in the app and bet on them while you're watching it. You know, the one thing right now is you need to get the game as close to live as possible for streaming, for betting to work in the way that it would work like that. But if I'm a betting company, if I'm like FanDuel or DraftKings,
doesn't FanDuel have a channel? No.
They have, FanDuel TV. If I'm FanDuel, why wouldn't I try making a bid for a Pac-12 game to put exclusively on our network, on our channel, within our betting app? Why wouldn't I? Because if you want to watch the game, it's free advertising for, the betting app.
Right.
And I'm sure that the NCAA would absolutely hate it, but this is where the world is going.
I think it's beyond the control of the sports entities now, whether it's professional or college. They can't do anything about it. But if I'm Brett Yormark, I brought this up before, folks. I really think he needs to invite 3 schools from the Pac-12 if it comes to that, and then wait and actually go back to ESPN and say, look, we would like to invite San Diego State. We'd like to invite UNLV. We'd like to invite Boise State. To someone else. Say, will you pay full price for this because we think this is a better product? We think this team brings more to our conference than what the other choice might be. But I also think when they get into that next tier, they have a possibility. I haven't seen the contract. I don't know what it is, but it is possible to bring in a third entity at that point. And I think it'd be really cool if that third entity would be someplace like FanDuel or another, platform that might be incorporated. I know that CBS is tied up with Caesars. CBS Sports is. And a game showing on that streaming environment with the betting app intertwined in it. I think that's where we can end up. It's those type of things that the Big 12 could do. And that's why I think UNLV should be actually in the running. I think getting that market and cornering the sports betting eyes and having a local team that would be on the sports book up on screens, I think it's huge. I think it's enormous. The Big 12 needs to be the sports betting conference. That's their niche. That is exactly where they need to be. How do you attract outside eyeballs? You really integrate sports betting because, folks, if you're not a sports bettor, you don't understand how sick and demented these people are, how tormented they are, and they will sit in front of the TV watching their bets all day long just because those are their bets. I've done that some. It's a horrible way to live your life.
For those listening at home, Fitz was using his right hand to point at one member of this podcast.
A member who's not talking right now.
And it was not me.
Okay. Coughing right now?
Yeah, whatever.
With the NFL, that is 100% true on a Sunday. That's me, but
you've reversed course on this podcast.
I've betted a few dimes or nickels in my life, but you guys both mentioned sports betting. That's where I was going to go too if this didn't get brought up.
A dime bag doesn't actually cost a dime. Anyhow, go ahead.
That's all right. Be sure to edit that one out. Sports betting. Where was I going? I mean, just the games. I don't give a crap about. I watch K-State no matter what, right? Big 12, I think it's good to stay up to date with the conference. Other than that, if I don't have money on a game, I don't give a crap. Me and Zach were hanging out in Morgantown, the hotel room, and we're watching the Celtics and some team because he has money. If you can – because you were looking at your phone, right? You're looking at your phone for your bets, and then you're watching the game for the game to see if your bet's going to hit. Right. If you can do that in one place, that's money. That's money right there.
So getting back to this, they both have their roles, but for now, you've got to be on linear. You've got to have a majority of your games on ESPN or Fox or CBS or NBC or ABC. One of those platforms has to have a majority of your games. And then, with the Big 12 right now, it's ESPN Plus. And if you're into that realm, it's a reality. Folks, it's going to move more and more to that. It just is. And you're going to have some hard decisions to make. But, when you're looking at an Apple, their reach is so limited. And we know they've got 50 million subscribers, but we don't know where they are.
Oh, I disagree with that Apple's reach is limited. They have the market share. I'm talking about hardware. They can push a notification to anybody in the world.
But you have to have a subscription to watch the game. They're even talking about maybe doing a separate app for Amazon and Apple that you'd have to subscribe to. I mean, Amazon reaches 200 million homes. I mean, I think that's a better play. If you're the Big 12, if they add teams from the West Coast, I would be all in on a Thursday night late game after the NFL. I'm all in on that.
It's got to be a good game though, because NFL got the rep for Thursday night being just bad, and that's how it is because you have to have all 32 teams play, and you're going to have good games. You're going to have.
They had some misfortune with that.
Sure, it was unlucky, but if it's going to be a good product, absolutely. But if you're just going to schedule, I don't know, Texas Tech and Cincinnati, who's really going to want to tune into that? Sure, if you got money on it, absolutely. But you got to make some big time games, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I'm all in. I just honestly, the only frustration I've had is that they're on the same old. Although there's going to be more Fox involved on the basketball side than there has in the past. But if they end up at 16, folks, I don't think the Big 12 will ever be 12 again. Just as I sit here now, they're going to go from this 14-school alignment. When Texas and Oklahoma leave, they're going to just jump right to 16 with 4 new schools from out west. It's the next step. It's going to go down. I mean, if George Kliavkoff can find something that gets them close to the Big 12's $32 million a school, really it's going to work out to about $30 million a school on just the media rights. Because if you add in Pac-12 teams, they don't get the full amount, so it kind of rounds down. I think the number works out where when you're at 16 and they add teams in, everyone's going to be at 30 million. So if he can get them in the 27, 28 million, maybe they stay together. But from what we're hearing, it's going to be at 22 with a bunch of streaming that won't show people won't be seeing their games. The conference is doomed. And the reason why they haven't announced the deal is as soon as they announce it, they're doomed. And the presidents and chancellors are finally saying, enough. You've had 8 months. Our competition's already got a deal. They're finally getting impatient because he's in over his head. They've done a lousy job of hiring commissioners 2 years in a row, and now he's leading them right down the drain. Anyhow, that's that. Was that the last question?
We got one more.
Okay, let's do it.
From Darren Sproles.
From Darren Sproles?
Super fan.
Oh,
his official super fan.
Did he pause the middle there on purpose?
You got too excited to let him finish. Okay. It was on you, I think.
I've just been silenced over here. Time. If Brett Yormark monetizes basketball, does that help the ACC or make them more likely for the next hostile takeover?
That's a great question. I think it might really define who the Big 12 wants from the ACC if they come apart. I think the ACC's in a delayed meltdown that we're seeing from the Pac-12. I mean, as soon as Florida State or Clemson crack the grant of rights or find a way out, it's all going to come apart. I mean, there's just the Big Ten and the SEC both want schools out of that conference that bring specific things to their conferences, and they're going to leave about 7 schools behind, all of which could, I don't really want Syracuse or Boston College, but a lot of them could be in the Big 12. So, but does that mean I never imagined Duke as a Big 12 team, but hold on, if you're going to have a huge contract for your basketball, I mean, does that mean Duke or North Carolina? I mean, I can't see the Big Ten or SEC getting anywhere near what the Big 12 will be for a separate basketball contract. And let's back up and clarify. We're fairly certain Brett Yormark is looking at uncoupling basketball from the current media rights. When this deal comes up, he's going to say, okay, we're going to bid on football and we're going to bid on basketball, because he's had estimations that this blows me away. It's worth $25 million a school for basketball alone, and they're only making $32. When they've been telling us basketball is only 10% of the contract. So they've been paying essentially $3 million for Big 12 basketball, and that leaves, 29 million, another 25 million. You're into the mid 40s, and now you're kind of competitive with the Big Ten and SEC. Now, granted, they'll probably do the same, but they're not going to see the kind of money. They're just not. Particularly if he brings in Villanova, brings in Gonzaga, brings in St. John's. Ryan Gilbert sneezes during the podcast.
I blame your dogs.
That's good. They don't. You can't be allergic to poodles. This is all a lie. They're hypoallergenic. You
don't get Zach started on that.
Blaming my dogs.
That's not what that means.
Whatever. Anyhow, I think that there could be a lot of money there for the Big 12. I'm excited about having a commissioner that sees things so clearly, with these things, because Big 12 basketball is in a really interesting position because the NBA is about to go to bid. Now, I think, and I'm going to make some people mad here, I think the NBA is an absolute trash product. I think most regular season games are just unwatchable. They're good for, I think, really a lot of their viewership is sports betting.
It's so much fun now.
It's entertainment. That's all it is.
Well,
There's no defense. You have music going in the arena in the middle of the game.
You think it's entertainment. I think it's crap.
No, I agree. I hate it as well.
But there's going to be big entities bidding on these rights, and I don't understand it. But there's a fear at Turner Broadcasting, that's all they're doing now, basically, right? They might do auto racing and golf.
No, they do hockey, and they just got not big into, but similar to their NBA product, they do TNT Game of the Week. I think they just do one game on hockey, yes. Okay. But
so if they lose the NBA, and heaven forbid what happens to their studio crew, the best in sports, they might look at the Big 12. They really might seriously look at the Big 12. What might get confusing is the Big 12 could end up with totally separate broadcast entities, the two sports. It could get a little confusing.
I don't think that's confusing at all. I mean, if there's sports on it right now, easy to tune in, whether it's Fox, NBC, CBS.
How many times do I still have to answer, how do I watch ESPN Plus?
It's different, though.
Okay. I'm fascinated by this. I think he's going to find a way to generate more and more money. He needs to make sure that he's strong-arming these networks into putting Big 12 football games on decent platforms because it matters where you're shown. If he can get games on ABC, the right games on ABC, and prove that they can pull ratings, then that'll be huge. But that's the dirty thing, is ESPN doesn't want that proven. It only costs them money to prove that. And they don't have the money.
I think it's crazy how little NBA games are on national television in the course of a week. TNT has 4 games a week, Tuesday and Thursday, 2 games each. ESPN, at least during like the early parts of the regular season, you got Wednesday, essentially, 2 games. Then you do Friday nights eventually. Mm-hmm. And then, once, the college basketball tournaments are done, you might see more NBA games, throughout the week on ESPN. But generally, there's maybe, 7 slots when you throw in Sunday after NFL's done? Like, there really aren't that many NBA games from a percentage standpoint that end up on national television. Because you've got, upwards 10, 12 games a night. Depending on the night, there's probably 100 games a week. Maybe that's a little much, but you get what I'm saying. Comparatively speaking, from a percentage wise, it's wild how much the NBA is able to generate from a national television contract for how little actually show up on national TV.
True. Very true. You got any thoughts on this?
I agree.
Okay. That's it. That's it for the Power Cat Questions podcast. We kept it under an hour. Make sure you check out all of our coverage. We're heading to Kansas City. Zach and Michael Goins will be heading up on Wednesday to hit the K-State press conference. Gills and I will roll in Thursday for the game because we are big time. We don't need to do that pregame stuff.
We're fashionably late.
We're just going to roll in and say, let's play.
Thank you for listening to the Power Cat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Power Cat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowerCat.com.
Spring training is right around the corner, which means it's time to start prepping for the fantasy baseball season. Join us on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, 4 times per week in January as part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. Scott White, Chris Towers, and me, Frank Stanfield, will be delivering the latest news, rankings, and strategies in just 5 minutes. Make sure to download and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and everywhere else podcasts are found.
Hey there, it's Gary Parrish with the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. We are still in the early weeks of conference play, which means there's no better time to tap in. Every Sunday night and Wednesday and Friday mornings, you can expect an episode in your feed highlighting everything you need to know from the sport of college basketball. Conference races, bracketology, coaching rumors. We'll talk about it all and be there with you at least 3 times a week as March Madness approaches. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. To find us, search for Eye on College Basketball in your podcast app of choice.